guys are set to go. So I'm going to introduce our speakers here. So we have two speakers here with us today. John Fassl is the director of the Dane County Youth Consortium. John has work experience, including 14 years as a marketing instructor at Winona Grove and a few years actually at MATC. For the past 7 years, he has been the director of the Dane County Youth Consortium. Annie Johnston is the coordinator for work-based learning at MMSD. Annie has a BS in legal studies from UW Madison, has spent the last 8 years working on youth type services. Welcome to John and Annie. Pass that back and forth, and then the slides, and you just want to advance them. So,
Yeah.
Roll it back. Got it.
Awesome. Right, so.
Well,
Okay.
Yep.
Can you hear me? Okay, great. Josh, do you want to introduce first?
Well, thank you all for letting us come talk to you a little bit about our work in the schools. As you said, I've taught business and marketing in high school for 14 years. And the thing I loved most about teaching was the days I wasn't actually teaching, right? It was the afternoons going to businesses and employers and watching my students learn on the job site. And those conversations are the things that have stayed with those students who I'm still connected with today. And this opportunity came along, youth apprenticeship, and I went, wait, I taught business and marketing. How do I not know about youth apprenticeship? And didn't know about it for most of my career. And went, well, most people, when you think of the word apprenticeship, right, we all think of construction and the trades. And when you're fighting this PR battle of our students who participate in the youth apprenticeship program go on to four-year school at the same rate all of our other high school students go to school, but they're twice as likely to complete that degree. That's crazy, right? Like, you think of that number, they're twice as likely to complete their degree because half of all college freshmen don't. That's a scary number that if our high school systems had to deal with, right? Of 50% high school graduation rate, we'd have a lot of problems with our K-12 system. So it really tells us and go, how do we make this better? Well, the first thing is have to convince people like you to work with a high school student. And I kind of dated myself, but I think most of you remember this movie. So this is, right, they're not clueless. When you think of working with a high school student, the first reaction is, that's who I'm going to get to work with as a student. No, they're not. We actually have students working, selling insurance, the student at American Family Insurance, outselling most of the other agents because they know how to connect with the consumer, right? We have students who are working in banks, right, and working as bank tellers and doing fantastic. I have a student who did IT, right, help desk support at Erdman. So we have very capable students doing this work, trying to figure out their path before leaving high school. And so that's what we're going to kind of chat with you a little bit about today. So when we think of the apprenticeship, right, we think of the challenge with the trades. There's 11 program areas from agriculture, right? We have a lot of students in that area. We have a ton of students in health science. This year is an amazing opportunity for students to finally get into pathways because the old model of health science was, we'll get your CNA and figure it out when you get to college. Well, there's 26 different ways to be a nurse. And none of them get to figure that out until junior year of college or post 4-year degree, when then they have to go get their extra certifications. So getting them that experience, UW Health hired 15 students this year in radiography, phlebotomy, a variety of different areas that you would normally think the students got to go to a 4-year school to get into those pathways. So we have 11 career clusters and 75 different pathways, very specifically aligned to a position for students. What makes youth apprenticeship different is it puts a whole lot of acronyms together. So I'm going to throw a few of them at you. ACP, anyone heard of that? Academic and Career Planning. Only came out, it's only about 5-6 years old. The challenge is that the goal is to put more career planning emphasis in our school system, because it was really, when we went to college, it was graduate high school, go to college, figure it out, get a better job, right? And so trying to change that mindset, well, that still puts the word academic in front of career planning. Well, at least we're making some effort. And then there's CCR, College and Career Readiness. And we have all kinds of school staff now who are college and career readiness coordinators. Still with the wrong word starting the sentence, right? Go to college, figure out your major, and then get a job. How many people got that job in your major at the same school you started at? Less than half, right? And so how do we flip that? Start with your career, figure out your major, and then go to the right school. So if you just flip those three things, then that's the goal of what Youth Apprenticeship is trying to help students. How do we do that? We put all these buckets together at school. Technical related instruction. Very specific skills that align to the career path. Regular high school academics, and then put in that work-based learning pot. So if you've heard of co-op, you've heard of work release, you've heard of internships. Those are all very good. They all kind of start with work release, co-op, internship. And then comes youth apprenticeship, because it puts all of those together and provides that school support in those areas. So our goal is to really go, okay, let's put the career in front of that college major, right? And why should you do this as an employer to say, well, why would I want to work with a student, right? Here's a few benefits. One of those first challenges is trying to hire people, right? The numbers don't lie. When we have 1.88 kids for every 2 adults, we have a people problem, right? Which will turn into our economic problem. So now I have employers starting to go, okay, we're going to work with you, but I only wanted to do this. Yes, and you're going to push them away from the industry. So now it's our job. How do we bring them all in to our industries and where we're needed? So how do we help kind of diversify our work pool, right? That whole baby boomer generation, COVID pushed everyone out of the workforce a whole lot earlier than they planned and created this big spike. So what's the solution to that? For us, it's take on some youth. The other part is if you have young 20-something employees who need a little bit of help in being a coach, what a great way to kind of learn to mentor, right? And to build some of those skills and leadership skills by coaching a high school student. The other part is when you say youth apprenticeship, most people will say, all right, I want to come present to all your students who aren't going to college. There's none of them. Every student thinks they're going to college because that's what they've been trained to say since they were pretty young. Our students are in that front of that class, right? They're the ones who are eager to get the opportunity, and we've kind of trained them to get there. The other part is you can help us with that skills gap. Everyone says they don't have the skills. More importantly, they don't have the ethic, the work ethic, right? Because schools can't hold them accountable for attendance, and we can't really hold them accountable for grades anymore. My son's high school now gives everyone a 50% if you don't turn anything in, right? Welcome to our new grading policy. So how do we prepare students for the real world when the schools kind of have a different approach right now? This is that way, right? Train them while they're here, while our schools have the access to connect to them, to coach them. And half of our job then is also coaching parents, how not to call you as a potential employer and say, Johnny's not coming to work today. Nope, Johnny has to be in charge, right? And help them become independent and put that. And so those are some of the benefits of that program, right? And really kind of getting connected to what is youth apprenticeship. Andy's going to tell you a little bit more about all those pieces.
Good afternoon, everyone. So there are a lot of different components to consider when having a student in the youth apprenticeship program. So the biggest thing is we know that students are doing a lot. There are a lot of opportunities for them to work while they're in high school. There's a lot of places now that will pay you $17 an hour to work at Taco Bell. I think I saw Aldi at $17.50 or something like that. But a lot of these opportunities in youth apprenticeship are required to be paid opportunities. So the average is around $13.78 of wages for students across the apprenticeship program. Some of it's as low as 10, and I've seen upwards of like 20 bucks an hour that students get to have this hands-on learning in a career that they're considering after high school. We'll go over this, I think, a little bit later, but the state has developed these skills standards that list out all the competencies for those 70+ different paths. So the student and the employer all know exactly what the student can get out of it at the end of their time in the program. And then there is a lot of exposure to the different aspects of the industry. So these students are, by participating in this program, the state has given the students what's called student learner status. So under the age of 18, they typically would not be allowed to work in certain more hazardous type work. So they're not allowed to use power tools typically if you're under the age of 18. But if you're in a youth apprenticeship, you are allowed to do that because you have that guided mentorship and the support, and it's a really great way for students to get that learning. And then while they're in their job, students are also required to take related classroom instruction. So if there is a student who is working at a bank, for example, we have students taking accounting classes, like advanced accounting classes, marketing classes, and other types of related things. If they've already maxed out at their high school, they can then take Madison College classes or UW-Madison College classes. So it helps supplement the learning that they're doing while on the job. And sometimes they can even teach those classes because they've learned so much at their job that they're able to, like, they're way advanced in their learning. And then we have, so individuals such as myself. So I work at the Madison School District and support all of our 6 high schools. So I work with the students individually. We do quarterly evaluations. We make sure that the students are getting the support on the school end, that the employer is getting support on their end of things, because working with a high school student, you know, there's a lot of things that everybody's learning. So we're here to make sure that the student is meeting the expectations, having a good time in a supportive environment. And then at the very end of their apprenticeship, so apprenticeship can be 1 year or 2 years, depending on when they start. If they're in their junior year, they can do that for 2 years, or if they start senior year, then 1 year. At the end of that time, they all get a state issued skill certificate that they can tell their future employers, they can tell their colleges, universities, if that's the track they decide to go down, that they successfully completed this state recognized program. And many of these pathways also come with additional certifications that are industry specific. So again, I'm just going with construction. There's the OSHA, first aid, all of that stuff that gets taken care of and paid for by this program. So a student is job ready by the time that they're done with high school.
So people will say, well, as an employer, what do I have to do to work with a student? You still have the ability to interview the applicants. We run a pretty aggressive filter process to take a student and say, okay, what classes have you already taken prior? Let's get some recommendations and go through that process. So every school kind of helps filter those students and coach them through. We really never tell a student no to youth apprenticeship, but we might say you're not quite ready yet. Here are some things to do next quarter. Right? So if their attendance isn't quite there or they haven't taken any classes in that area. So it really helps coach them on taking the right classes in school that align to their career path. But as an employer, our ask is that you provide a mentor, not just a supervisor, someone who's willing to kind of teach, coach, and show that student all of the opportunities within the field. And that's where that well-rounded experience comes in. So we usually use an 80-20 rule. We have these job guides that are very specific on the skill that a student has to learn on the job. But really, that's 20%. 80% of the time, they should be doing whatever you need them to do for work, but giving them that extra piece to learn other opportunities and really see the whole industry. That competitive wage is really challenging right now. As you were mentioning, like only $13.50 is our average for youth apprentices. And it's a challenge, right? When they can go make $17 an hour at Taco Bell or McDonald's. And that's really a challenge. So how do we get them into these skilled areas when the unskilled areas are now paying more, right? And so we're really trying to push some of that wages to be comparable. So we're able to convince those students to, here's why the longer benefit is. And we have some students who really understand it. I have 35 students who work at UW Research Labs in biotechnology. They're making $10 an hour, but they're working with a UW professor. Half of them get written up on a 2-year program. They're getting written into the research papers and giving presentations nationally their senior year of high school, right? So it's a pretty amazing opportunity. And most of them have then continue on to some pretty prestigious universities. They get that, but not all students kind of understand or are willing to put off the wage earning piece to that. Usually students work 10 to 15 hours while school's in session, or they work 20 to 30 hours a week in the summer. So they have to work 450 total hours. So what does this look like? Here's an example of biotech. Why do I show biotech? It's an area that I'm still trying to place students from this year. I have lots of construction opportunities for students. We have lots of automotive opportunities for students, and actually even finance opportunities. And we're continually to try to go recruit more students who want to take those roles. And the opposite's true for biotech and engineering. I often have students who are qualified, ready to go in these areas, and we don't have enough placements. So what does this look like? There are, in STEM, that career cluster for youth apprenticeship, we have 5 pathways: biotechnology, civil engineering, and mechanical engineering. And students can kind of work through those opportunities as they align to a career path and an employer's opportunity. The state has a job guide that's this middle piece that says, here are the skills the student has to do. And so that first page, you go, oh, wow, those are pretty broad. What does that mean? We get deeper into the packet, and then you can see what those actual skills look like. And so for as a supervisor, right, as that mentor is going, oh, have we done this? Yeah, we can check each one of those pieces and then give them an overall rating at the end of their time. So that's the document that we submit to the state, and then they get their certification for youth apprenticeship. That certification gets them 4-year college credit in the UW system as an elective, as well as those students often take a related class. Our consortium is very unique. I run 8 night classes. I run a vet tech, farm tech, biotech, auto tech, construction classes for these students. We have an IT course as well. So we're very unique to provide these extra courses that our high schools can't in the area. And so a lot of times they're at other schools or they're at Madison College and a couple of them. So those students are committing to kind of the traditional apprenticeship model, working and taking that related class at the same time. People will say, well, how do you know this work? Well, here's our history. So QBE, which I think we still have 1 student there this year. And we happen to go out to do a promo video. And this video is, you'll see it on our site. If you're in IT, I would love to talk to you. But here's QBE. There's alerts of kids that I had taken. This is 3 or 4 years old now. But every one of them is still in the IT industry. And 7 of them are still at QBE in different programs, right? So that's pretty amazing retention numbers over a length of time. And the fact that they're all still in that industry. And many of them have changed, went, oh, I don't have to go get a 4-year computer science degree to be a network engineer. But they don't know what a network engineer is in high school, right? And most counselors don't know how to educate those different pathway opportunities. It's go to college, get the degree, and then you'll get the job. So to really help kind of stress that piece of, here are those pathways, here are these opportunities for students. One of the things is our office works to bridge the gap between students and potential employers. Once you take a student, then you're working with somebody like Annie from the school district. And if you want to talk a little bit about what that looks like.
Sure. Yeah, so when we work with students, there are a couple different ways that when talking with a student, how we kind of narrow down exactly what they potentially could do while they're in their apprenticeship, because a lot of students have a lot of ideas that are really grand. So it's really working with them to figure out how to narrow down exactly what they want to focus on during their time in high school. So when working with students, we kind of look at what courses have they already taken in high school? What kind of jobs have they done? Is there anyone in their family or friends of the family who are in a career or industry that they are interested in working or learning more about? So we take all of that stuff together and see kind of where the gaps are, if we need to take that additional time to take a related class. Maybe they think that finance sounds really cool, but they've never taken an accounting class. So before placing them in a job, we definitely want to make sure that they like that type of work. So that's why some of that classroom components are really, really important to kind of help narrow things down for students. So that's also why for construction, we want to make sure that they like being outside and they are okay with the temperatures, because there's a few students who are like, oh, I have to be out in the cold. Absolutely not. So, so that's stuff that we try to screen out so that when we do share resumes with employers, these are students that have spent dedicated time focused on the career that they want to pursue after high school. And maybe they do end up changing their minds. Maybe there are some little things that they just don't like about that industry, but that's okay, because they're this whole opportunity is to help narrow down for kids what they want to do, and figuring out what you don't want to do is a really important next step. I think I changed my major in college 4 or 5 times. So before settling on the legal studies and then tacking on sociology and criminal justice, because why not all of it? So really trying to help narrow these things down for kids is going to save them a lot of time, a lot of money, and then connecting them with these businesses will be great to help further that path as well.
So we'll take a little break and start to answer some questions. I think they hid that slide, sorry. But our plan was to let you ask some questions before we talk about a few more things. So do you have any questions on what that looks like so far?
When does this start? What year does it start in high school?
Yeah, so we work with high school juniors and seniors. We'll start, right now, we're in the recruitment process of students for this next school year already, right? And so we're working with current sophomores and juniors as they'll be juniors and seniors next year. So we currently have current juniors and seniors we're still trying to place from last school.
We have specific support in place for people who, for example, don't have transportation. Given the challenges you saw at the mayoral forum, of transportation, what are you doing for kids who just simply don't have a car? What are you doing? Is there anything you can do, or are you doing for kids who have children and want to be in this class?
Yeah, so my office also runs the federal grant. So the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, it's called WIOA. In school youth, we used to have it actually as a middle college program. So those students would spend afternoons at Madison College. Now it's a little bit more open to align to any pathway. That program provides funding for all of those pieces and extra support for each student that has a barrier. So there's a long list of barriers. And as soon as the student has any of those barriers, they qualify for this extra pot of money to help with that support. Also, the county is doing a lot of transportation pieces on funding. And so the hardest part for me as a former high school educator is that we don't have driver's ed in school. And that right there, right, you want to talk about the achievement and the wage earning gap. That right there is what's caused this huge divide, in my opinion, because there's a big segment of students who aren't getting driver's license and then no longer have transportation options. So to try to help get those other students additional driver's ed, but then now you're talking insurance and all those other pieces that tie into transportation. Yeah.
So as an employer, do you work with people? So like, could we have a position that is basically set up so that apprentice after apprentice, you can fill that spot? And how would you go about developing that kind of relationship with that?
Yeah. The best part with our office is you have that connection to all of the school districts, right? And so all 17 school districts, we help to facilitate that. So wherever you're located, we'll go to the closest school district. But what if one year you have a student and then the next year they don't have a student ready to go, right? Now I can expand to the other closest school district to say, hey, here's an opportunity for the next student. We have several companies that will hire 2 students, one junior and then a senior, right? And so they always have a rotation, and then that senior is training the next student. So a lot of our biotech labs are doing that, where they'll hire students and they'll just keep hiring them as a junior, and then they always have 2 students. Yes.
We in Oregon have a collaboration with the school district, for childcare and so forth. I don't see, do you have anything like that in your youth apprenticeship?
No, the state is currently building that. The legislature passed a law to add. So these 11 pathways were based on high growth, high wage, high opportunity. So that's why those 11 exist, and there are other 5 areas that don't. the state passed a law a couple of years back that said, hey, we want you to build youth apprenticeships for all of them. So they are building that. There is an early childhood co-op program that most schools still run. Oregon is one of them who has a fantastic teacher because that's really teacher-led. And so there's not a lot of those around anymore. And so most students in that area, we still kind of push through that co-op filter.
Does this program apply to like the Verona schools?
Yes.
All.
Yep, all of school. So I'm happy. We had 130 students. We crossed 410 the last week for this year, which is fantastic. But then the reality of my work, I go, well, we graduate 5,000 kids in Dane County every year. I think we could have 400 alone in Madison School, right? Sun Prairie School District has 35 youth apprentices. They should have 100 per high school, right? They should have 200. And so we have a long way to go yet to kind of keep pulling more students in, but students come with employers, right? So like we have to pull both in at the same time because I can go get the students, but if I don't have places to put them and connect them with employer opportunities, right, we can't. So in order to grow it, we have to kind of build both of those relationships at the same time. Yeah.
How do you coordinate the schedules of students and the employer?
Yeah, so it really depends on, well, I have a posting that I'll show you next of how do you help me, tell me what you want, and I'll find the student. The other flip side of that is what is the student involved in? And so we'll have construction students that go to work at 6 a.m. They work till 10, and then they'll go back to school from 10 to 2, 10 to 3, and then they'll still participate in sports after school. And so that works well for a certain group of students. And oh, by the way, that student also comes to my Wednesday night class for construction. I mean, think about their commitment that we've changed your traditional student who's been disconnected from school, right? When you talk about construction students. On the other hand, my finance and banking, we know that they need them at drive time, and we know you need them on Saturday morning, right? And so those students, and that's part of the reason why finance and youth apprenticeship hasn't really grown, because that eliminates almost every student who's involved in after school activities, right? In order to work 2 to 5. But we can customize their school schedule. And so they all have a school coordinator like Annie, who goes in and adjusts their school schedule to meet the employer's needs. All right, so if you're going, well, I'm not quite ready to hire, or in your case, hey, I'm no longer in this and I don't no longer hire, do you still have contact to people in the industry who have said, I'm struggling finding people? Oh, here's an idea. Reach out to our group, right? And let me go talk to them and help convince them that here's an opportunity for them. We had an amazing opportunity a couple of years ago, and again, we weren't able to create the next student. Supreme Structures, get a high school senior girl as a project manager. She's further advanced than almost every student graduating from UW-Platteville right now. I couldn't convince her, and he tried to tell her, I'll pay for you 18 months of training and you'll get your PM certification and you don't have to go there. She still went, right? So she still went to Platteville, and she's coming back and working for him every weekend and in the summer, right? Fantastic opportunity. For us, it was a 1-year replacement. So what we're finding is the students who do the 2-year youth apprenticeship are much more likely to change that career trajectory and go, oh, there's another way as well. So other ways, if you're like, I'm not quite sure I'm ready to hire a student.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different opportunities. They range in commitment from just a guest speaker for an hour, maybe even half an hour, all the way up to youth apprenticeship. So I believe this list is all of Dane County, like it's a comprehensive list that basically every school district recognizes, but it's all the different things that you can do to engage with students in whichever industry that you're in. So guest speakers, job shadows, tours, all of those kinds of things are really great things that we use as a way to narrow down again career paths for students. So if I have a student that, again, is interested in something, they maybe have taken accounting classes, but they've never really been in a bank because their family only does online banking now. They don't really know what a bank looks like or what a day in life looks like. So having them do a job shadow is really helpful because then they can kind of see that back of house stuff, see if they really do find it interesting. So these are very valuable experiences that we have been trying to build back since COVID, since couldn't really do a whole lot, but yeah, so each of the individual school to career coordinators are able to help connect our community partners with teachers who then can connect with students. And then myself, I work with all 6 schools. So I'm able to help connect with the teachers or the coordinators at each of the schools to get these kinds of experiences to the students.
But a lot of schools will do mock interviewing, right? And so they would love having people to come in and do that, to come in and be a guest speaker, to host a student as a job shadow. It's one of the first things we have a student as they're applying for youth apprenticeship and they don't have connections and they're not quite sure which pathway. We send them out on job shadows to make sure that this is a thing that, because we're asking them to commit through high school graduation. So that's 12 months, 24 months for a student to make that commitment through graduation. So we want to make sure that that placement is the right piece for them. So there's a lot of different ways that you could get involved that's not directly hiring a student.
There are some of us in this room that have careers in first responders to inspire them up. I don't see any pathways for the first responders and public safety up there, and that is a huge issue right now.
It's here. It's not state approved because volunteer firemen. The word volunteer, right? And so our students have to be paid, and all of a sudden that creates a challenge. In the public safety side, they haven't really been willing to go under 18 for community service officers. We're getting close. So we're building some of those relationships. I know it's coming. I actually have a pathway that we've been doing with students, but it's not officially YA. It's locally in our county. We have a 911 class that Paul Logan helped us build a couple of years back. And so we're currently running, and he's actually my facilitator for that class. And they're going out to Leeds Road, right?
I'm not teaching.
Yeah. They're going out to Leeds Road and learning how to be a 911 call center operator. So we're doing those things and trying to provide those opportunities. We're still trying to build more paid opportunities for students. When I see more paid opportunities, I can go to the state and push for an official youth apprenticeship.
Interpretation for the deaf or as well as languages. Do you have things in that? I'm currently spending lots of time trying to find interpreters for a deaf player in our volleyball club. So I'm encountering lots of systems. And then in the
Like
court system,
as in positions to be interpreters.
development, yeah, into interpreters, whether it be another language or ASL or sign language.
Yeah, we do not have those, mostly because there's not paid employment for high school students for that type of job. If there was, we can build some. Right, and so that's the other part. I built a few of these checklists and it starts with employers. And that's the fun part for me, is I love that it starts with employers and not schools. Right, because it's not about curriculum and standards. It's about what are the skills, what are their job opportunities. Let's build that, get a group of employers now statewide to sign on and say, yes, we'll hire kids for this. Then we can go find the classes that they should take that would relate and create a program for it. So one last thing, as you were asking, like, how do we build this and how do I find some students? This is kind of one of those ways. So in our consortium, I have created kind of a YA job posting template for students. And Avco Plastics was the one who really helped me run with engineering. We got lucky. We got a student who knew his dad knew the manager at Avco and got him in as a summer piece. And he was like, I want to keep going. And he signed on to youth apprenticeship. And Avco went, wow, this is amazing. We should take our summer 12-week intern program and make that available for youth apprentices. And they did. And they spread what way they would normally do with a college student for 12 weeks and spread it out for 18 weeks for 18 months and got them trained and went, all right, same amount of effort in 3 to 4 weeks of training for a high school student versus a college, but they're here for 11 more months extra, right? And so that piece was really helpful to them. And so what we do is we take your traditional job posting that's written for adults because it has experience required, it has certification, it has all these things. There you go. Do you really have to have all those? Or a lot of people use those things as a filter, right? All right, well, we're that filter now. So what are the things you really want a high school student to have before I send them to you? We put that on here. All right, what are the things you're willing to teach them? Because in areas where we have to go recruit students, I need it to be marketable. So what are the opportunities you're willing to teach, coach, and show them? Put that in here. And then the rest of it is for me to teach a high school kid how to create their resume, put work availability on it, put their actual skills, because you look at most high school kids' resume, it's the list of all the things they've done. None of those things have anything to do with their job that they're applying for, right? And so we're starting to connect. All right, now let's connect all the things you've done with the skills you need for this job. So that's a piece that no one really teaches a student how to do. So we're doing that in part of our resume templates, and then the follow-up procedures and some of the calling. This document, then I can either go recruit to our existing database of students, or I can send it to Annie to send out to the Madison school students and say, hey, go find a student. So now it's going from her through a bunch of their experiential learning counselors in their schools and getting it out to in front of students to say, oh, let's pull students in for more opportunities. From there, we have them apply, whether it's on your website, send you their resume, and you still have full hiring process intact. Any other questions? I have a few things. I didn't bring enough for everybody, but if you're interested or you know somebody who this might be helpful for, feel free. I have the kind of quick overview and those pathways connected here, as well as my card if you're interested in that. Great.
Thank you, John, Josh, and Annie. Appreciate your time today. And for all of our speakers, we make a contribution to the Rotary International and Polio Plus Fund. The same in your honor as well. So thank you both for being here.